For we'll be looking ahead to future market developments, including the increasing likelihood of mergers and acquisitions to remain viable in Spain's competitive environment. To discuss these topics, we've brought together two expert speakers. First of all, Xavi Muñoz, who is partner at ECIJA law firm, and Mauro de Fabritiis, who you've already seen speaking before. And moderating this discussion, we've brought in from Glasgow, Scott Longley, who is a contributing writer at Earnings and More, and some other newsletters. Scott, Xavi, and Mauro, please come to the stage. Thank you. Yeah. Please take a seat. Hey, Scott.
I go there?
Come on, get it.
Thank you.
Again.
So, and before we start this, there's always the question of the future, looking in the crystal ball, and then everybody always says, well, we don't have a crystal ball. So there's no excuse for this here. So you'll be asked to look at the crystal ball here.
There's a bit more pressure in the last, session. Okay.
That's very good, Willem. Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last session. So propelled by Café con Leche and donuts, we boats against the tide. We move on into the last session of the day. My name's Scott Longley. As Willem said, I'm going to give myself a title here. I'm the managing editor of a bunch of newsletters, Earnings and More, Compliance and More, and a new LATAM-focused one called Los Ingresos y Más. And joining me on the panel here are Mauro and Xavi. If you want to introduce yourselves, and then I'll get onto the questions.
Thank you, and thank you for give us the possibility to speak of this really interesting and difficult part of the panel. My name is Mauro de Fabritiis, and I'm founder of MDF Partners and working in the gaming sector in different regulated markets since almost 20 years.
Xavi.
Okay, thanks for inviting us to the event. And my name is Xavi Muñoz, partner in a Spanish law firm, but also present in Latin America in most countries called ECIJA.
I've got my questions on the phone. I'm not just watching the highlights from the game last night. How has the Spanish market developed since the pandemic? And we've heard a lot about regulatory developments, but it'd be interesting from a market perspective in terms of the operators that are there and how the market is performing in terms of revenues and GGR. Could you go through some of that, Mauro?
Okay, if the magic balls doesn't move the chart, maybe we can.
The clicker should be on
somewhere.
The table will. Is that okay? Thank you.
Thank you. So, on this respect, I presented this morning a specific chart showing the trend in the Spanish market, and also some outcome from the analysis we did with the Promo Sherlock show some results. But I suggest to focus here a specific chart that shows, according to an analysis we did, how the situation of Spain in different years moved in terms of concentration of the market, and maybe this chart could help our common discussion. So since the beginning, the local operators were representing the 16% of the market in terms of GGR market share, and we can see that after many years, so from 2016 to 2022, the share moves to 28%. So this is a sense that the market is changing.
So Bet365 there represents what percentage of the market, roughly?
It's more than 20.
More than 20%. And then in terms of the local heroes that have grown in the last few years, you would say that Sportium, Cadera...
They have been growing also due to the pandemic, because with the pandemic, the the digital process was accelerated in many markets. In Spain, in Italy, we saw this this morning. In other markets, because the online was the only way to play at the end of the day because of the closure of the physical shops. The pandemic effect in terms of figures in Spain was not so higher and impressive as it was in Italy. So if we look at the figures in terms of size of the market increased, but not so much. And this is related to several factors.
And has it stayed stable since, or did it go backwards in terms of online share or online penetration since the pandemic has ended?
Since the pandemic, the online penetration increased, of course, because it was, if I remember well, around 7.5% of incidents, the online on the total. And during 2020, 2021, it reached 13-14%, but then goes back. Now we can estimate end of 2022 something like 11% of incidents, compared to 20% in Italy and 30-35% in other jurisdictions. But not all the data are perfectly comparable, because it also depends on the size of the brick and mortar sector.
Yeah. Now, there was some analysis out from Regulus Partners recently that I think a lot of people read about trying to explain the relatively low online penetration in the gaming market in Spain versus the rest of Europe. And in particular, it made a comparison. And it was in a chart from David Henwood earlier about Sweden. Sweden was very high in terms of penetration, and the Spanish market is very, very low in comparison. Is there and I think Regulus in their analysis said it was to do with, partly it's to do with the nature of the gaming market in Spain and the amount of cash transactions that are attached to that gaming market. Could you explain what Regulus talked about and what you understand by what they're saying there?
You mean if there are specific reasons for Spain to... I think there are several factors that influenced the trend. One positive thing I personally see is that compared to all the European markets, and we looked at some figures today with the H2 analysis, this percentage is the lowest, and so it gives room for Spain to increase the online penetration share. So I think we should look at this point in a positive way. In a prospective scenario, there is room for Spain to grow. On the other side, if we ask why is this online penetration lower than other countries, there are factors like the digitalization of the countries. That is an aspect that explains many things. Maybe Spain compared to Sweden or compared to other countries has a lower rate of the digitalization. Also the culture of the country. Also the fact that people is afraid of something that is not physical and it's digital. There is an ancient culture related to this. And also the fact that the retail sector is something that is part of the traditional culture of Spanish people. I'm not only referring to the gaming machine or the sport betting sector, but more on the lotteries.
Okay.
And this is a very peculiar aspect of the market. So if the question is there is room for Spain to grow in terms of incidents and also in terms of global value in the online, I think there is the possibility. And the last but not the least, the regulation. Yeah. The regulation is not so...
Sure. Well, I think that's probably been dealt with a lot earlier today. Xavi, is there a kind of a cultural attachment to the lottery that was mentioned there, that among Spanish players, that they stick with the product that they know and they like, and that stops them potentially moving into online gaming? Is that a fair idea?
Well, I think it's more for Mauro still, this one, but let me add on a couple of things that he mentioned before, because it's a very market thing if they move or not from lotteries to other games. But you said before about the pandemic, I mean, year 2021, because the pandemic started in March 2020, and 2021 there was still lockdowns and all this, and also there were many sports events which were forbidden. So on the betting side, it really went down. I mean, if we look at the chart of GGR for Spain, 2021 is the only year that goes down by 4% only. Okay, but there's a combination of the pandemic, but also the publicity decree was issued on November 2020 and started its effects in 2021. So I think it's a weird combination year. But then in 2022, already the GGR grows a lot. So going to your second question, if there's a space for growth, I think there is, because all years has always been growing, except the only one is 2021. Yeah. And if they are attached to their to their games, my impression, but I'm not market analyst, okay? This is more an impression. I think there's been a big overflow from products from we call it here lottery products, or La Quiniela, the pool betting, the state pool betting, which has really dramatically gone down because people has gone to sports betting, to odds sports betting. So I think there's been a big transfer. I don't know the figures, but I think so.
So you think that there is a transfer going on between old school, if we call it that, lottery products towards more online sports betting products? Is that general trend?
Customers moving from one to the other?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. And also younger people going directly into the the new digital products, and older people, well. Maybe
going to sleep. It makes sense what Xavi said, but we have to differentiate from there are differences between the different markets, because Spain, it's a really peculiar from a regulatory perspective market. Let's consider that in the retail we have the monopoly of the lotteries, but with regard to gaming machines and to retail betting, the jurisdiction is segmented into different regions. And each region has its own rules, and so it's different. What happens in terms of movements from players from retail to online, or vice versa in a situation like the Spanish one, compared, for example, to the Italian, just to where the regulation is more centralized, let's say. Yeah. So it's not that easy, and it also depends on the game. Maybe for the betting vertical, it's easier for a brick-and-mortar customer to move online. For a gaming machine customer, the gaming experience is different.
Yes.
For sure, the pandemic accelerated this trend and pushed people, not only in the gaming sector but also in other sectors, to be more online than retail, to use the online technology.
Well, in terms of the gaming machine market in Spain, is it a what kind of gaming is it? Is it gaming slot halls? Is it like halls like in Italy?
In bars as well.
In bars, yeah. Okay. So it's a cultural thing as much as
very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Very much so, yeah.
And that can't be replicated by online slots. That's potentially the
well, yeah, of course, the user experience playing in a bar to online. It's also sometimes I think it's also different type of users.
Yeah.
And different type of players, but I think it's pretty different.
Yeah, we have to make the difference between if you are speaking of synergies regarding the product from a producer perspective. There is a trend, and not only in Spain, using the retail product to be replicated in the online, or also to use, and there are a good example here in Spain, products with a brand in the retail, or using the specific features brick and mortar slots to be translated to the online world, and this affects to the synergies or to the economies of scale that slots producer have. But if you look at things from the customer perspective, as Xavi said, the experience is different. We are for the way the things are managed in Spain. We are not in omni-channel approach where a brick and mortar customer moves to online and vice versa. If we speak of gaming machines at the moment.
Okay. So the local heroes that we've got on the chart here that you can see, we had. You've just turned it off there. But anyway, they were there.
Technology.
They're back. They're back. So the likes of Sportium and Cadira and Luckier, do they have any land-based presence, and what is their land-based presence? Let's try and work that out. Those local heroes.
You mean the local hero? Yeah. The majority of them have a local presence. So this is the strength to be local, because the local presence makes, first of all, creates an advantage in terms of positioning. So the company is in the territory. Anyone could look at the company in the shops, in the corners, salones, and whatsoever. And this affects in a positive way to the brand when it comes for the operator to go online with the retail brand. And so this is the competitive advantage Spanish operators have compared to the pure online. Then there is another aspect that differently from the past, and Santiago and Juan this morning were representing the situation that we had in Spain some years ago, where everything was possible from a marketing perspective. So there was the only limitation for operators to expand their acquisition process and to retain customers was their fantasy, because at the end of the day, everything was possible in terms of marketing. Nowadays, the situation is quite different, and there are several restrictions regarding the possibility to advertise. And so it means that the newcomers in the market have serious problem to create brand awareness and trustness with regard to the players. And so the local heroes have an advantage, and this is the reason why the market share growth during the period.
Because they've got the land-based presence, because you can see them on the high street.
This is one of the aspects, because they have a land-based presence and they have a brand, first of all. Then there is another aspect that is related with the product. So it's also a possibility to take, let's say, to acquire a customer from the retail and move the customer to the online, especially for the betting. Most likely, it's not that easy, but most likely the RPU of a customer coming from the retail, it's on average 2 times or 3 times the same KPI you have for the customer online, because you can create intimacy with the client. The retail customer could be long lasting in terms of timing and so on. But it's don't think that it's something automatic and simple, because it's a difficult process and requires investment, experience, technology, and so on.
I think if I may add to this. I think, it's true that because of the publicity restrictions, now it makes more sense to be present in the streets and have your brand, the brand awareness. But also some of these companies like Sportium, Retabet, and Kilobet in the Basque Country, this more or less had also been their strategy from the very beginning as well. I mean, now maybe it's a good win for them, how the publicity is, but Sportium had always had the strategy of, being on the streets the same as Codere. So from pretty much from the beginning. Some of the players that we see here.
Yeah. Now, I know the next chart you've got is very interesting because it's the comparison with Italy. And the point about the local heroes and why it's important to understand how they're doing or how they're potentially doing in the market is because, and this comes to the crystal ball element, we can assume there's a potential for some large-scale M&A in the Spanish market because these companies are potentially there to be bought. But maybe if we could go to the Italian example so you can see...
Maybe you can take the Italian example.
You'll kick it. Oh.
No.
Yes. I mean, we can see in the top corner there a bit Sisal, SNAI, Rosmatka, Eurobet.
Okay, thank you. If you can, please put the first one.
Yeah, you can see some of the names there in the top corner of this slide, and they have been through. They've all been involved in
these
M&A.
are for any country. In the left side of the chart, we see the what we call the local heroes, so the traditional and historical operators in the country, and of course they are local, and so they are able to match the offer with the customer, the local customer needs, and they are also.
Yeah, next one, right?
Yeah,
okay,
that's it.
okay, and they are also able to customize the offer for and the leverage on their brand. What an example of what happened in mature markets and competitive and attractive markets like Italy is that in some point of the evolution cycle, M&A comes because some companies, also the big local heroes, are not able to grow more if they don't buy EBITDA or market share. Yeah. You can be competitive, but at the end of the day, there is a roof. And after this roof, the organic growth is not possible, especially if you have regulatory constraints and limitation in the advertising activity that are a common aspect that makes Spain and Italy not so far from each other, with differences for sure, but not so far in terms of limitation. And here, in this chart, we have represented some of the most important M&A operations in Italy, starting from Snaitech, acquired from Playtech, the GameNet operation of acquisition of Goldbet, and then up to Lottomatica acquisition, and then the last in the last steps there was it was listed in the stock exchange quite recently. The Sisal acquisition for around 2 billions from the Flutter Group, HBC, ePlay with the acquisition of Sirsa of ePlay, and the recent acquisition of BetFlag by Lottomatica Group for 360 million. So at the end of the day, if you look at these M&A activities, the strategy behind is related to the growth of market share of a specific segment. And so when a company buys another company, maybe grows the market share in betting or casino or somewhere, or even the possibility to have a different or more complete positioning. In other markets, the process has started. Of course, depending on the attractivity of the market, the number of M&A increase. In Italy, we are speaking of a market that nowadays is, as I told this morning, 9 billion euros of GGR.
Yeah.
So we are speaking of a market that is 4 times the Spanish market, and so it's of course it's interesting for local and international groups to have a clear positioning in the market. What will happen in Spain? The process is going on, but maybe.
Well, this is it, isn't it? Is that you can see the process, that it's a process of consolidation and of acquisition of local heroes by global gaming groups that has happened in Italy, and that as you say, you can see the progression there, and we now have Lotta Massacre as a listed entity with a much bigger company, and SNAI is apparently still for sale potentially from Playtech, and Entain is often mooted as a potential buyer.
Entain acquired Eurobet.
Yeah, and you can see how the consolidation process and the acquisition of local heroes becomes a thing. And so the point here about your chart really is to say, in the years ahead, you can see something similar, potentially. There's the potential for something similar to happen in Spain, because you have a number of local heroes that are doing quite well in the market, albeit in a relatively smaller market in terms of online penetration. And you can see the potential there for Sportium, for Cadera, and for Luckia to be potentially bought by Flutter, Entain, Lotta Massacre even could come into the market, and that's something that is, it's not a solid prediction, but you can guess that might happen, that process.
Yeah, I think that for sure is something that could happen in Spain, and maybe it's about to happen, and the process could be in 2 ways. The first way could be that someone inside the Spanish market could buy some other company in the market to grow in terms of market share. The other way around is that a company, an international company, increasing its presence in different territory, decides, in order to leverage the business through a more relevant local presence in Spain, to buy local heroes. The point is, which is the minimum size that makes this operation sustainable and attractive?
Sure. Yeah.
That's the question. Because do we have operators in Spain big enough to make attractive the M&A for a big international group? Or you have to do a lot of shopping in Spain to create consent? This is the big issue.
Xavi, just what...
Yeah.
Go on.
No, on this, that I think it also has to be looked at a broader scale, worldwide scale, because this sector still has maybe half the world to unfold and to deregulate and to open up. If you look at other sectors like banking, telecommunications, etc., at the end you have some global players, because those are very mature markets. I know the telecoms market pretty much, and Europe, for example, has always tried to have their European champions, which is Vodafone, Orange, Telefonica. Not British Telecom, Dutch Telecom, not really. But this market is not as mature as other markets. But I think, and as I said, half of the world is still pending. So maybe Spain will have one big. I mean, looking at a global scale, of course it will concentrate, because the big players will start buying smaller players, because in this market they need, their business is scaling. Sure. That's how their business works.
And forgive me, you're probably not a competition lawyer, but
I do.
You're okay. So that's perfect. Would there be competition?
A little bit.
well, that's all we need. But would there be competition issues if for instance, Sportium and Luckia, for instance, became a single entity? Would that as we've got their second, fourth, or fifth in the market, would there be a competition issue?
Yeah, there could be competition issues, and I don't know exactly the size of Luckia if with Sportium would. But yeah, and then sometimes you need to ask for permission to the local authorities, to the European authorities. It depends if this market is marked as a reference market that needs to protection, and that if they become too big and it's a reference market, then they put some remedies that they have to sell part of the business.
And I think in other markets, and my only knowledge of this really comes from the UK market, but what happened was the competition regulator would look at the whole market, the whole gaming market, as opposed to just the online market, and therefore within the whole market, and clearly, in the Spanish example, within the whole market, whole gaming market, the second and fifth operator in online getting together doesn't cause a market competition issue because it's not.
Maybe not, yeah.
Yeah. Accepting the competition aside, when it comes to M&A, often it's often said that in M&A, execution is obviously the key to it, is getting the acquisition right. But when it comes to the culture of buying into, if one of these operators was looking out, coming into the market and was looking at buying their way into the market, what kind of issues would arise, do you think, in terms of buying a Spanish company that we might not have seen, that we might have seen in Italy, but we haven't heard about that for a while, but in terms of the Spanish corporate culture?
Yeah, from the corporate, I mean, of course, from the financial markets and, EBITDA and all these issues, of course, the buyer will have to look into all that and see if it's the type of target that he wants. But then more from a regulatory legal point of view, I mean, there's issues that, that I would say are important. I mean, for example, first, foreign direct investment notifications and clearances, if you have to do them, like if you're not an EU investor. Right. So maybe you need that, and sometimes this takes months. And gambling companies are subject to that because they deal with very sensitive data. So that's something that sometimes it's not well taken into account. Of course, you need to look at the renewal of the licenses. You know, what's the age of the license and when those need to be renewed. You need to look at, I mean, it depends on the purchase. I mean, if the purchaser, for example, as it happens often, wants to remove all software of the company that is going to buy and put its own platforms, because he has, better cost with his own platforms. Then he will need to look at, the duration of the contracts, all the software contracts that the company has, with the duration. Of course, a very important issue in Spain is, two issues which I think are related. It's any finding procedures or any investigation on an existing investigation on finding procedures, because as in many other countries, the fines are very high, so that can be a big issue if the buyer misses on that. And something that is related to it, which I think is becoming more and more important, is the compliance culture of that company. Yeah. At the moment, in a so highly regulated market, there's like 5-6 areas from GDPR, AML, reporting to the regulator, secure gaming, criminal liability. There's so many areas that operators need to deal with. And it is important that when you buy a company, it has a good compliance set and a compliance culture, because otherwise, maybe problems can come afterwards as well. Yeah. So some of the issues. And of course, minimizing the price, and the seller wants to maximize the price, but that's on the price. And just to finish, also on the price, I think it's, of course, the seller wants to maximize and the buyer wants to minimize, but I think it's very important also to look at the price structure as well. What's paid in cash, what's the earn-out, and what's the escrow amount that goes to cover liabilities. And then on the earn-out, which normally is subject to a future revenues and future profits, I think it's a very difficult clause to work out, because it's, I buy your company and you will pay me depending on how the company does, but then it's you running it. It's not me running it, it's you running it. So that's a very difficult way of structuring the price.
And this makes the agreement longer
very
and longer,
long,
because
long,
it's but it's absolutely key what Xavi was speaking about regarding the compliance, because if during the due diligence and the legal, the tax, the business due diligence, you find something that is not the green light to buy, it's better not to buy, because you have a lot of risk. And I would add also one important thing, the regulatory risk, because when a company buys another company in a specific country, you should also foresee what will happen in terms of regulation in that country. And the very last point, we have not been speaking of the most important factor, that if a company buys another company and you put two values together, this is a financial business. So I have a company that of 2 billions, I had a company of 1 billion, it's a company of 3 billions, but this is not M&A. You need to find synergies, economies of scale, and way to make these 3 millions to be 4, or this 1 billion EBITDA be 1.7. And in this sense, the concentration process is based on managing internal assets like the technical platform, the gaming platform, and some internal technological asset to create economies of scale around the world. This is really important.
Okay. Thanks very much. If there's any questions, I'm conscious that beer is being poured elsewhere in the building. So.
Not in this building, but somewhere else. Any questions from the room about this really, really interesting topic? So we've looked a little bit in the crystal ball. We'll pack it up, take it again. Please remain seated. Keep it for next year, so we can, or maybe we take a bigger one, so it becomes more clear. Scott, Mauro, Xavi, thank you very much for sharing your expertise. It was really, really interesting. Thank you.